Hello everyone, my name is Micah, and in this video I'll be sharing with you my currently inked lineup for January. I thought that would be fun. I haven't talked about my fountain pens and inks in a little bit, and I have added some new fountain pens and some new inks, so I'm really excited to share all of that with you. And so let's dive right in with this first one, which is a Lamy Safari in this like beautiful mint color. This has given me a little bit of trouble lately with heart starts and skipping, so I'm not quite sure. I've put a couple different inks in it to see if it was the ink, but there might be something going on with the nib. But currently inked in this is D. Atramantis Havana, or Havana? I'm not quite sure how you say that. It's a interesting color. It's sort of a, it's sort of between a yellow and a green, but I could also see someone describe this as a wheat color, or maybe even, yeah, it's sort of a soft green yellow. And mentis. Spelling's hard when you're talking. And this is called Havana or Havana. I'm not quite sure. On the swatch online on Van Ness, it looked a lot more vibrant, a lot deeper, like a golden brown almost, but this is definitely a very soft color. It has a little bit of shading, and if I can show you, I can show you here in my weeks that it almost has a little bit of a Van Gogh vibe going on, which I kind of like. I think that's quite precious. I'm not sure yet how I feel about it as a long form writing ink, if it's too light maybe, but I just inked that up, so the jury is still out on that, how I feel about it, but it's definitely a little surprising compared to the swatch that I saw on the line. And then next up, this is also a new pen. This is a TWSBI Eco in the clear, and I have it. This is so fun, swishing the ink around. Am I even focused? I'm not sure. Yeah, so this is inked with the Kyo no Oto Yamabuki Iro. I'm probably saying that all wrong, but it's a nice dirty yellow, which I like. I like a good dirty yellow. It has some nice shading, and the shading sort of leans towards a green, which probably is why this yellow seems like a dirty yellow. Yeah, so this is Kyo no Oto. And I've read online that a lot of people say that this is a dry ink. So far I haven't had any problems with sort of heart starts in this TWSBI, but that's definitely also why I put it in the TWSBI, because I wasn't quite sure if my Lamys could handle that. Yeah, it's a really readable yellow, I would say, and you can also see already that those two inks are fairly similar, and there's a couple more in this lineup that are getting close there. I can also show you some bigger swatches of those. It's definitely something that I'm trying to figure out, is sort of how do you make a lineup of inks where you also like the whole range. I mean, I do like all these inks. I'm just experimenting with, okay, how much do I want to pay attention to what is in all my pens, and does that go together? Does that give me variety? That kind of stuff. So let me know if that's something, if variety is something you consider when you're inking up a pen, when you think about your whole lineup. I'd be curious. Next up is another Lamy Safari. I think this color is called Mango. This is a medium nib, and this is inked, still inked, has been for a while, with Robert Oster, African Gold. Robert Oster. And although the name is gold, I think this has a very beautiful bronze look to it. It's sort of it's a brown, but it's very golden brown, and because of the nice shading going from light to dark, it doesn't look like metallic, but it definitely gives that sort of like shimmering, yeah, just bronzy look. I really, really like this ink. This sample is the only one that I'm about to actually empty, so I've used my whole sample. I kept refilling this with the sample instead of inking it with a different ink. So I think I'm definitely a fan. And so far it's been so reliable. Had no problems with it being inked in this Lamy. And there was a time where I didn't write with it for a couple weeks and no hard starts, no problems. So yeah, definitely a favorite of mine currently. And then next up, again, one of a newer acquisition, because I was curious. I'd seen that in a couple people's YouTube videos, and so I was definitely curious about bigger nibs. So this is a Jinhao X159, and this has a, a really big nib, and I like it. It's a very pretty reliable writer, I would say. I did try some waterproof ink in this, and that gave me terrible heart starts and skipping, so it couldn't quite handle the waterproof ink. But now this is inked up with Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon, which is also probably it's probably pronounced differently, but and it's a nice olive green, I would say. It has some light shading, but I would say that this is, again, it's a nice olive green, but it's not necessarily something too exciting. The swatch online, I don't know, it had a little bit more depth to it, and maybe this is a fine nib, although some people say that these Jinhao nibs run a little larger, so maybe I'll definitely try it in a different nib for comparison. But yeah, like I said, it's a nice olive green. What I also noticed is, if you remember, the last ink video that I did, I talked about sort of being surprisingly enamored by the Queen and Castle by Ferris Wheel Press. Again, because it has a beautiful olive green, but then with that rosy shimmer in it, actual shimmer, it looks very fairy tale like. I think, at least in the swatch, the Goose Poupon looks similar, although this has definitely more yellow in it, and I wish this was more like that, except for the pink shimmer. But they're similar-ish, I think. They get a similar vibe anyway. So if you're looking for a non-shimmer alternative for this, then maybe you'll like the Goose Poupon. Oh, and while we're looking at swatches, so the Havana and the Yamabuki Iro, this is definitely more yellow and more green. This is definitely more subdued, and there you can really see what I mean with sort of almost going into a wheat color. And then the Robert Oster African Gold is definitely more brown than any of them. But you can tell like sort of how it goes from that dark, it shades between a dark like that and that lighter color, and that gives it sort of that bronzy look, I think. Next up is another Jinhao X159. Love this color. It comes off a little bit more red on camera right now, but it's more orange than that. It's sort of a terracotta color, I would say. And I found this colorway on AliExpress. And this is inked with Noodler's Kiowa, I think. Man, some of those ink names are really hard to pronounce, or definitely seem foreign to me. Now, I would currently not go out and buy Noodler's ink. I wouldn't want to support this company. The owner of the company has said some terrible things. But I found this bottle of ink in my stash. I had quite forgotten about that bottle of ink. I bought that years and years and years ago, before I even knew that you could buy ink samples. So now I have it, and so I figured I might as well use it. And then this is this really nice golden brown, really warm. Yeah, it's sort of an orangey burnt sienna kind of brown with some very nice shading. So I quite like it. Now, this is quite the fallish lineup here. Now we're getting into some very different hues in this cute little Kaweco Sport. I think this is called the Soft Mandarin. And this is inked with a really nice muted pink. This is Colorverse, as I think my first Colorverse ink. And it's called C or Europa. I'm not quite sure. Please excuse any of my pronunciations here. But yeah, it's a really readable, muted pink, pretty dark, definitely darker for any of you who remembered from my last ink video. I was trying out the J.R. Ban Louis d'Ancre, and so this is in a similar vein, but again, quite a lot darker, and probably a little cooler than the Louis d'Ancre. I quite like it. This combo is pretty wet. I'm not sure if that's the fountain pen or if it's the ink or the combination of both. This is a medium nib, so that might have something to do with it. But yeah, I like it. I'm not grabbing for this very often, and I'm not sure if that's because of the pink ink or the fountain pen itself. I mean, I do like writing with it, but it's fascinating because I started my sort of ink journey into this by trying out a very specific kind of color palette of colors that I know that I like. So a dirty yellow, a muted pink, a sort of tealish color, and some warmer browns. That's colors that I gravitate towards when I make my illustrations and my watercolors. So I figured, why not start there with the fountain pen inks? But you know, it might turn out that just because I like these colors in other mediums, it doesn't necessarily mean that that translates into inks. Now again, like, I love this ink, it's very pretty, but when I sit down to journal, especially when I design my pages, I'm more often drawn towards the sort of muted or dirty yellows and browns and things like that. And maybe that has also something to do with the elements that I pick to, you know, design a page around. Maybe, you know, pink often seems a little too, I don't want to say bright, because I mean, this isn't even that bright. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong about all of this, and I do find a pink that I want to write with constantly, but I'm surprised, as much as I love this ink color, I'm surprised of how little I pick this one out of the lineup, if that makes sense. Does that ever happen to you, that you have a color that you, on paper, really like, but then you put it in a pen and there's no obvious reason why you wouldn't want to write with it, but you just kind of don't? Let me know. I would be curious about that. And then we have a TWSBI Eco in the lilac color. This one I won from a giveaway by Simone, and I'm so happy that I did, because it made me realize how reliable of a writer these TWSBIs are, and that's why I bought the clear one in a medium nib to try a different nib, so this is a fine nib. The one thing I'm still sort of trying out, or not sure about, is the grip section. I think this might be a little too skinny for me to be comfortable, but again, I'm not sure. I want to do more long writing with it to figure that out. But this is inked with Organics Studio. I think there's an S. I might be getting this wrong. Organics, and maybe not a apostrophe either. I should have looked that up, but it's Organic Studio, and the color is called Frank L. Baum, the author of Wizard of Oz, and fittingly, this ink has this beautiful emerald color. It's very readable. It's so beautiful. I'm using that constantly. In fact, I think I used it on the previous journaling page. Yeah. Isn't that so pretty? I think it's gorgeous. It's just, it doesn't really have a lot of sheening or anything, or no sheening. I meant shading. It doesn't shade that much, and I do like shading inks. But yeah, it's such a good balance between being a tealish blue without going too green, if that makes sense, and being readable. So last time I was trying out Ferris Wheel Press Morningside Mint, if my camera will focus. There we go. Which I love that hue of this a little better, but it's so light in the writing. So this is obviously a lot more readable. So when it comes to readability, I definitely prefer this one. Yeah, and that's my currently inked lineup for January. Like I said, I think some of these colors are a little too similar. I'm actually having to reference my my samples sometimes, because I forget which ink is in what pen, because they're also similar. It's hard to keep track. That's probably, I mean, it's just a little, yeah, I don't know, a little too cumbersome. So yeah, I think I will, in the next lineup, I think I will pay a little bit more attention to variety of hues. But that said, I do like the investigative nature of this, to have ink samples that are very similar in the hues, especially if you look online and it's hard to tell the difference. I do like that, to find like the perfect, you know, muted yellow green color. I do like that. It's very fascinating to me. But yeah, just as a lineup, it's a little boring maybe. But yeah, I'm having so much fun with my fountain pens, so much fun with the inks. I just love the colors so much. And I think I might have said this before, but I think I've realized that the appeal for me in fountain pen inks is definitely how they're similar to watercolors, in that they have all these qualities that come out when you write, you know, shading, sheening, how they're different depending on what paper you write on, what pen you put them in. There's just so much exploration, and the colors all seem so alive that way. So yeah, that's definitely, I'm all for that, and I'm so excited, and I already have a list of colors that I'm gonna try out next. But yeah, if you think you have a suggestion for me that I would like, definitely leave those in the comments. I'm always happy to hear about other colors and different brands. Yeah, I definitely want to try out some other different brands. I'm very excited about that. Yeah, again, I could talk about this all day. So yeah, let's chat in the comments if you too love nerding out about fountain pens and inks. All right, thanks so much for sharing this time with me, and I see you in the next one. Happy journaling.